In a world where every gesture seems mediated by a financial transaction, imagining a place where money simply hasn't circulated for decades might seem utopian or impossible. But this reality exists. And it's not fiction, nor a modern social experiment. In certain isolated corners of the planet, entire communities have learned to live without relying on currency to survive. What sustains these regions isn't figures, but human relationships, direct exchanges, mutual collaboration, and a rare sense of belonging in today's urban centers. In the heart of the Andalusian mountains, in southern Spain, lies Marinaleda, small village that for more than 30 years has stood out for its collective-based economy, where money barely enters the local flow. There are no banks, no landlords charging exorbitant rent, no advertising in the streets. And even more surprising, the unemployment rate is among the lowest in the region. All this in a European country marked by high youth unemployment and rising social inequality. Marinaleda operates like a massive agricultural cooperative. The land, once owned by large estate owners, was won through years of occupations, marshes, and strikes, and today it belongs to the people, not to individuals, but to everyone. Each resident can work on the communal lands, where crops like peppers, olive oil, and artichokes are grown. Instead of conventional salaries, profits are shared equally among all contributors. The amount is the same for everyone, regardless of the role. The logic there is simple but revolutionary. No one is more important than anyone else. An agricultural engineer and a field worker receive the same pay. Everyone has guaranteed housing. Homes are built collectively, using materials subsidized by the local government. And residents pay only a small monthly amount, with no interest, as a symbolic contribution, not exceeding 15 euros. That's right, no mortgages, no rent, no debt. Visitors to Marinaleda notice something curious. There are stores, but hardly any compulsive consumption. Clothes are exchanged among neighbors. Food comes directly from the land to the table, and services are offered based on need and solidarity. There's a local bar, a small market, but no one lives to accumulate, they live to share. It's an economy of proximity, where relationships matter more than profit. Basic services are guaranteed with surprising quality. There are daycare centers, schools, a library, a sports gym, a health center, and free cultural spaces. Children grow up in freedom, and the elderly are not abandoned. There are no beggars. There are no millionaires. There's a population that has learned to live with enough, and considers that a victory. Crime is virtually non-existent, not because of heavy policing, but because there's little to protect. Private property isn't seen as a symbol of power, and the sense of community prevents exclusion. If someone is in need, the collective steps in. If someone oversteps, dialogue resolves it. It's a logic that flips the pillars of traditional competition-based society. However, this way of life requires commitment. Living without money does not mean living without effort. The foundation of everything is collective work. There are schedules, tasks, responsibilities. And anyone who chooses to live in Marinaleda must get involved. There is no space for individualism. Freedom there is built through shared responsibility, and perhaps that is the most valuable currency of all. Spain isn't the only country with such experiences. In other parts of the world, especially among indigenous communities in South America, alternative villages in the United States, and eco-villages in Germany and New Zealand, similar lifestyles are quietly flourishing, far from the headlines. These are practical attempts to regain control of daily life, removing power from corporations and returning it to the hands of ordinary people. In India, some Gandhian communities also live with minimal capital interference. What matters there is voluntary service, self-sufficiency, and spirituality. Money isn't rejected out of hatred, but by philosophy. The idea is to live with less, to live better. The same logic applies to Amish groups in the United States, who avoid using modern currency and live within a barter and mutual aid economy. These places are not free from challenges. There are criticisms, there are limits. The dependence on state subsidies in some cases, geographic isolation, and external skepticism are frequent obstacles. But what's surprising is the persistence. In a world dominated by capital, these communities have survived for decades, and in many ways, they thrive. The existence of these territories raises a profound question. Is money really indispensable for life to function? Or has it merely been naturalized as the only way? When looking at places like Maranalada, what we see is not a distant utopia, but a reality that directly challenges the dominant economic model. Living without money is not the same as living in poverty. On the contrary, it often means living with less anxiety, less competition, less hoarding, and more presence. It's living in a network. Living with others, not against them. It's reversing the logic of scarcity and placing abundance where it truly matters. Time, health, community, affection. It's common to think that such ways of life only work in small places. But this idea serves more to justify the current system than to understand possible alternatives. What these experiences prove is that change begins in the collective, not in size. And to work, it requires a deep choice, to give up excess in the name of sufficiency. These spaces exist, persist, and inspire. They are small windows into what the world could be if it were willing to rearrange its priorities. They are invitations to reflect. And more than that, they are proof that living without money or with very little is possible. And for many, it's liberating. If this account sparks some unease in you, share it. Sometimes, all it takes to start questioning the system is knowing that real alternatives already exist. And that some people, today, are living in simpler and perhaps freer ways. These regions don't deny the world. They have simply chosen to live on its margins, and in doing so, they reveal everything the world has forgotten. Where there is no money, there is presence. Where there is no rush, there is depth. Where there is no consumption, there is connection. It is in this space that another form of humanity blooms. At the entrance to the village, there are no signs with flashy logos or billboards advertising promotions. The landscape is simple, serene, marked by low buildings and gardens tended by hands that know every curve of the land. The streets are calm, neighbors greet each other by name, and decisions that affect the community are not made by distant authorities. They are debated in public assemblies, with simple chairs and common voices. There, politics is not a stage. It is a tool. The local economy moves without haste. There is no race for profit, no obsession with targets. Instead, there is collective planning. Those who plant today, harvest for all. Work is divided based on each person's availability and skills. Young people learn early that their value does not lie in what they accumulate, but in what they build together. And this redefines the concept of success that the rest of the world carries as an unquestionable truth. In the fields, the rhythm is different. While in urban centers time is measured by clocks and apps, here it is guided by the seasons and care for the land. Men and women work side by side, in silence or singing, each one knowing that their effort is not only for food, but for shared dignity. At the end of the day, tiredness is shared as naturally as the bread. Schools do not only teach formulas or dates. They teach values. Children grow up learning about cooperation before competition. They are encouraged to think collectively before making any choice. And when they return home, they often help with farm tasks, not out of obligation, but because they know that everything there is done together. Every small action has a direct impact on someone else's life, and that is not theory. It is practice. Homes are built through community efforts. Walls are raised with cement, sweat, and solidarity. There are no hired companies or for-profit contractors. It's neighbors helping neighbors, brick by brick, until the home is ready. And when one house is finished, the next begins. Because no one is left behind. Shelter is a real right, not a promise conditioned by interest rates and contracts. Food is largely the direct result of local labor. At the village markets, food has no barcodes. It has faces behind the production. Each fruit, each vegetable, each preserve carries the care of those who planted and harvested it with their own hands. And when there is surplus, it is not wasted. It is donated, shared, reused. The concept of waste is unfamiliar there because everything has value, even what seems small. In health, access is guaranteed. There are no endless lines, no rushed appointments. The medical team knows the residents by name. Medicine is practiced with closeness, not urgency. The professionals live in the community, understand its challenges, respect its customs. And if something exceeds local resources, there are solidarity networks with other communities that help. Without commercial demands, social life also has its own pace. Local festivals are organized with everyone's participation. There are no tickets or exclusivity. Celebrations are for honoring collective achievements, remembering stories, strengthening bonds. There is dancing, traditional music, food prepared by many hands. Every event is an affirmation that living in community can be simple and profound at the same time. Public safety is not a tense subject. Mutual trust reduces conflict. There are no electric fences or invasive surveillance systems. People look out for each other. When something unexpected happens, conversation is the first response. Dialogue comes before punishment. And this culture continues because it was built on daily coexistence, not emergency measures. In cultural workshops, young and old learn together. There are spaces for painting, theater, writing, and music. And even without major sponsorships, the creations are intense, relevant, and deeply connected to the place's identity. They are not made to sell, but to express. Art is born as an outcry, as celebration, as memory. And that makes it even more valuable. Instead of storefronts with global brands, there are hand-painted murals. They tell the village's story, honor former community leaders, celebrate successful harvests. The street is a living gallery where every stroke has meaning. And those who walk by feel that time is not just counting. It is witness, the relationship with the environment is respectful. Nature is not pushed to its limit. It is observed, cared for, regenerated. Sustainable techniques are applied from irrigation to waste disposal. Not for trendiness, but out of practical wisdom. Those who live from the land understand that to harm it is to jeopardize the future. And that environmental awareness is not rhetorical, it is daily. Visitors arriving for the first time are surprised by the absence of rush, by the constant presence of genuine smiles, by the fact that no one seems to be trying to impress. Because there, a person's value is not in what they show, but in what they contribute. And that changes the way others are seen. External trade exists, but it is minimal. Some exchanges are made with other regions, always carefully to avoid disrupting the internal balance. The priority is to maintain autonomy, ensuring that essential needs are met locally. This reduces dependence on unstable markets and protects the village from external crises. Free time is enjoyed with intensity. Not because there is luxury, but because there is freedom. Freedom to create, to rest, to be with one's children, to walk without a destination. It is a kind of wealth that doesn't appear on graphs, but that transforms life. And for many, it is more desired than any full bank account. There's no direct comparison with the lifestyle of big cities. What is lived there is another paradigm, another rhythm, another logic. And those who choose to stay do so out of conscious choice, not due to lack of options. It is a return to the essential, a refusal to live life based on numbers and unreachable goals. Children grow up in direct contact with what they consume. They know where food comes from, what is needed to produce it, and how to care for what sustains them. This practical education forms more conscious, more responsible adults who are less dependent on structures that distance them from the origin of things. In the school environment, respect for diversity is cultivated from an early age. There is room for differences, for debate, for questioning. Teachers do not occupy a place of absolute authority, but of knowledge facilitators. And that creates a lasting bond of trust, one that carries through the stages of life. Aging there is welcomed with dignity. The elderly are not isolated or forgotten. They continue participating in decisions, sharing their experiences, being cared for with affection. The value of life does not decrease with age, on the contrary. It intensifies. And finally, perhaps the most powerful thing, no one needs to prove their worth through material achievements. A person's value is measured by their commitment to the community, by the way they care for others. In the community kitchen, the smell of baking bread mixes with the light conversation between neighbors. The oven was built with local resources and volunteer labor. Those who know how to do it teach, those who don't learn. Communal meals are not exceptions, they are the rule. And in them, there's no competition for seats, no rush to finish. Eating together is a ritual of connection, a daily reminder that well-being is shared. In an improvised shed, a group repairs old bicycles. Some came from donations, others were rescued from abandonment. There, everything is recovered. Nothing is discarded without first trying to find a new purpose. Every tightened screw, every replaced chain reinforces the idea that new things don't need to come from a store. They can come from the continuation of what's useful. And this view of things as extensions of life, not as disposable objects, redefines the logic of consumption. Healthcare goes beyond traditional medicine. Medicinal plants are grown in organized gardens, studied with care, and used with wisdom. There are exchanges between communities about the use of herbs, their correct application, their limits and possibilities. Ancestral wisdom is not folklore, it is living science, applied every day by those who understand the body as part of a whole. And when care is collective, healing is too. In the sewing workshop, colorful fabrics take on new forms. Clothes are made by reusing materials, following the aesthetics and identity of the village itself. Fashion there is not dictated by seasons or runways, but by need and affection. A dress may carry the history of 3 generations, patched and mended with care. Each stitch is an affirmation that beauty and simplicity can walk side by side. Exchange system does not use money. It uses time, talent, effort, and trust. A service rendered today is repaid with another tomorrow. A roof repair might be worth a basket of vegetables. Math lessons can be exchanged for help with the harvest. There is no exact calculation, no official tables. There is balance. And it is maintained by transparency in relationships, by trust. Built-in practice, day after day. In a circular room, weekly meetings discuss the most important decisions. Children may speak. Elders are listened to with attention. And no one has more votes than another. The horizontality is not theoretical. It is real, sustained by active listening and the recognition that power, when distributed, protects more than it threatens. These meetings are not always fast, but they are always necessary. And the time dedicated to them is seen as an investment, not a loss. Basic infrastructure was created gradually, without large external investments. Wells were dug collectively. Solar energy systems were installed with the help of volunteers and local apprentices. Nothing came ready. Everything was built with local hands, with shared knowledge, and with a vision of the future that places autonomy above dependency. This does not mean isolation, it means sovereignty. External communication happens with balance. The community is connected to the world, but not dominated by it. There is internet access in shared spaces, used with purpose. Information circulates, but it does not distract. Electronic devices do not dictate meetings, they serve as support. Conversations are still held eye to eye, and touch is still more valuable than a notification. There is space for spirituality, but without imposition. Each resident is free to express their faith or not. Spiritual gatherings are moments of introspection, soft music, deep reflection. There is no enforcement of behavior, no control. Spirituality flourishes as part of the integral care of the human being. And it is respected in its plurality, without suffocating dogmas, without empty promises. The village also faces difficulties. There are times of drought, challenges with pests, ideological conflicts, but problems are not denied, they are faced together. And this willingness to deal with what is difficult, without hiding, without outsourcing, shows a kind of maturity. That is not learned in theory, it is raw practice. It is shared reality. The older generation carries the memory of a time when money ruled all choices. And when they tell those stories, it is not with nostalgia, it is with critical awareness. They remember the fear of not being able to afford a medical appointment, the anguish of living just to pay bills, the feeling of running without getting anywhere. These memories function as compasses. They point to what they don't want to. Repeat. The younger generation, on the other hand, is born with a different view. They grow up seeing that work has value even without paper-based payment. They learn that respect can't be bought, that status isn't inherited, that happiness is not in consumption. That foundation changes everything. It changes how they see the world, how they shape their desires, how they relate to others. In times of global crisis, these communities become beacons. When traditional systems collapse, they remain steady. Not because they are immune to external impacts, but because they have solid internal structure. They have real bonds, support networks, productive autonomy. And that is more valuable than any economic protection. Visitors who pass through there carry an uncomfortable question. Why don't we all live like this? The simplicity is startling, but also enchanting. The absence of rush, the depth of bonds, the lightness of routine, all this seems to contradict what the outside world considers success. And it is precisely there that the impact lies. There's no intention of converting anyone. These communities don't promote themselves as an ideal model. They simply live. They simply show, through their existence, that there are other paths. And this silent demonstration is often more powerful than any speech. Because it doesn't try to convince, it reveals. Teenagers are encouraged to explore the world, but with a strong foundation. Many leave to study, to learn, to broaden horizons. But when they return, they bring new knowledge without forgetting their roots. And that connection between old and new keeps the village alive. The world is not seen as a threat, but as a space for exchange. The natural environment is grateful. Green areas are not covered in concrete, but preserved as extensions of life. Trails are maintained with care, rivers are cleaned regularly, animals have space to live. Respect for the land is practical, direct, daily. And that even influences the way people walk, lightly. When the day ends, the lights go out early. There's no need to extend the artificial. The stars can be seen clearly again. Silence is respected, and so is rest. The night is not an interruption, it is part of the cycle. And those who sleep there, sleep with the light conscience of someone living in coherence. If all of this seems far from your reality, ask yourself, why? What prevents urban communities from adopting more humane, more supportive, more sustainable practices? Perhaps the answer lies less in money and more in the willingness to change. If this reflection moved you, consider sharing. Sometimes, a new idea begins this way, with a simple, real story told at the right moment. In local schools, education is not separated from life. Math is learned by calculating harvests and exchanges. Language is developed by writing real letters, cooperation projects, or records for the community's archives. Science is lived through caring for animals, managing water, and composting food. And all of this happens with the direct involvement of the children, who grow up understanding the world not as something distant, but as something built with their own hands. Learning happens in circles, in walks, in workshops, in silence, and in conversation. Teachers are called facilitators, and respect does not come from the title, but from the example. Everyone teaches. Everyone learns, and curiosity is the greatest engine. No one needs a report card to know when a child is learning. Just observe their eyes, their questions, their desire to participate. On symbolic dates, there are no shopping sprees or rush. There is celebration. Seasonal festivals mark the cycles of the earth, the time of rain, the harvests, the changes in season. On these occasions, the community gathers to sing, tell stories, give thanks. Clothes are made there, so are the instruments. Everything has origin, meaning, and affection. And this revival of ancient rituals reinforces a sense of belonging that money alone cannot give. Culture flourishes with freedom. Those who paint display their work on the walls of common centers. Those who sing perform on quiet nights under the open sky. Those who write leave text on the community bulletin board. There is no competition, no art market, there is expression. And that turns everyday life into something alive, creative, and sensitive. Art is not a luxury. It is part of the necessary breath for a complete life. Buildings follow a different logic. Houses are built collectively, without hurry, using sustainable techniques and local materials. There is care for environmental impact, thermal comfort, and aesthetic harmony. And each house carries not only the identity of its residents, but also the mark of those who helped. That's why entering a house there also means entering a network of stories and relationships that began before the first stone was laid. When a family needs something, the request is made out loud, without embarrassment. There is no shame in needing, there's a community to provide. Whether it's furniture, a tool, or emotional support, the answer is never, there's none. But let's see together how to get it. This reconfigures the relationship with others. It's not about charity, but about commitment to the common good. The care economy is central. Time is reserved to visit the elderly, to listen to teenagers, to help overwhelmed mothers. The community functions not only because of productive tasks, but because there is space for affection. And this network of care is not organized by formal policies, but by real bonds, strengthened through daily coexistence. Food choices reflect local values. What is planted is what is eaten. The land's diversity determines the menu, not the other way around. Ultra-processed foods hardly enter. Preferences exist, of course, but they are shaped by respect for origin, for the work of those who plant, for the impact of what is consumed. Eating, there, is a political, spiritual, and social act all at once. Young people learn about the outside world, but they do not idealize what is out there. They know there are advantages and also traps. Some decide to leave, to experience, to try urban life. Others return with new ideas. The flow is natural, without drama. The village holds no one back, but it offers roots strong enough for each one to know where they came from, and where they can return if needed. Conflicts are inevitable, but they are treated as part of life, not as tragedy. There are listening circles, mediations, conscious pauses. When something hurts, it is not swept under the rug. It is spoken, it is heard, it is repaired. This mature way of dealing with mistakes is what allows the community to keep growing without breaking apart inside. The absence of money does not eliminate value, it only redefines where it comes from. Value lies in the time offered, the shared effort, the honored word. And when these values take root, trust stops being the exception and becomes the standard. Doors are not locked, food is not padlocked, strangers are not distrusted. Security comes from bonds, not from surveillance. In times of surplus, everything is redistributed. If a crop yields more than expected, it is shared. If a construction is finished ahead of schedule, the workforce helps another. There is no hoarding out of fear. There is abundance through trust. And that logic is hard to understand from the outside. But there, it works. And it changes everything. The relationship with time is different. No one runs against the clock. Time is a natural flow. There are tasks, there are deadlines, but they are adjusted to life, not the other way around. Moments of rest are not rewards but parts of the cycle. And that makes people work with more focus, more joy, more presence. Visitors often report the same sensation, that time passes differently there. As if the clock slowed down, as if the mind quieted. And it's not an illusion. It's the effect of a place where life is not rushed, it is lived, where every action has context, where every presence is whole. Imagine feeling that every day. Children grow up with autonomy. Little by little, they learn to care for animals, to plant, to help in decision-making. There is neither overprotection nor neglect. There is trust. And that kind of upbringing produces secure, responsible, creative adults. People who are not afraid of work nor of uncertainty. People who know how to collaborate. Water is used with care. Reuse is the rule. Showers are short, irrigation systems are conscious, and water cycle education campaigns are ongoing. And that respect transforms the relationship with the planet. Nothing is free, everything is part of a larger ecosystem. And understanding that is the first step to taking better care. When someone gets sick, they are not alone. There are visits, rotating care, adjustments in routines. Pain is not isolated, it is shared. And this kind of solidarity goes beyond protocol. It is spontaneous gesture, real listening, presence. And those who go through it, even in fragility, feel protected. There is no imposed ideal of success. Each person builds their own path within the collective. Someone may devote themselves to music, another to farming, another to philosophy. No choice is judged based on financial return. What matters is contribution to the whole, personal fulfillment, harmony with the surroundings. And at the end of the day, when the sun says goodbye behind the hills, there is a clear feeling in the air that life there has meaning. Not because it's perfect, but because it is coherent. Because it is built with truth, with presence, with intention. And that is rare. If you believe that other ways of life deserve to be known, share this account. Perhaps someone, somewhere is looking for exactly this, a new way of existing. Many people go through life believing that living without money is impossible. That money is the only mechanism capable of moving the world, supporting families, creating a future. But when one closely observes a community that has lived without it for decades, uncomfortable and revealing questions arise. What, after all, is money failing to solve? And what are we losing by relying so heavily on it? In villages where money has stopped circulating, there's no feeling of loss. There is relief. Relief from measuring everything in figures, from turning relationships into contracts, from calculating every gesture based on financial return. People move with purpose, through connection, by real need. And that shifts the center of gravity. In life, of course, not everything is easy. The challenges remain. There are conflicts, limitations, misunderstandings. But the way these challenges are faced reveals the strength of a model based on reciprocity. When everyone participates in the solution, the problem ceases to be an individual burden and becomes a collective lesson. It is strange for outsiders to see a society where no one charges to cut hair, build a house, or cook lunch for 100 people. But there, doing is more important than the value attributed to the doing. And this shift changes the understanding of dignity, usefulness, and success. Instead of clients, there are partners. Instead of profits, there are shared outcomes. Instead of competition, there's complementation. And over time, those who live in this system begin to experience a rare peace, not because everything is solved, but because the constant fear of scarcity slowly disappears. There's a different kind of freedom when you don't have to sell your time to survive. When your existence is not tied to bills, debts, and consumption goals. The freedom to say, today I want to help, today I want to learn, today I need to rest, without guilt or shame. In big cities, this seems like a utopia. But in communities that live this way, it is just the routine. And when something becomes routine, it is no longer extraordinary, it becomes foundation. And from that foundation, a new way of relating to the planet, to others, and to oneself is born. Imagine growing up without hearing phrases like, that doesn't make money, that's not worth it, that doesn't sell. Imagine being able to choose what you love to do, without fear of not being able to pay the bills. That kind of freedom is rare, but it exists. And it is being carefully cultivated in small regions the world has yet to learn how to see. There, waste decreases, consumption is conscious, and resources are respected. Not because of laws or punishments, but because of awareness. The very logic that sustains life already educates. And when life educates, values are born from within, not imposed from outside. Mental health also improves. Without the pressure to prove oneself, to flaunt, to compete, people breathe better. Children play more. Adults sleep with less weight. Anxiety doesn't disappear, but it doesn't dominate. Because there is time, there is space. There is community, spirituality. In many of these regions, is not a ritual separate from life. It is life itself. It is in how one harvests, how one shares, how one listens. It doesn't matter what the religious tradition is. The sacred there lies in the care. And caring becomes the greatest act of faith. It is not easy to maintain such a system in such volatile times. External pressures exist. There are attempts to impose norms, to introduce capital as the solution, to convince the youth that there is a better world out there. And perhaps there is. But for many who have lived on both sides, the world out there may be more comfortable, but not more whole. The stories of these regions rarely make headlines. They don't generate clicks, don't move markets. But perhaps they are exactly where the world should be paying the most attention. Because there, even without wanting to be an example, they are opening up a forgotten possibility to live well without depending on money. If you've come this far, maybe something touched your heart. Maybe it sparked a question, a desire, a memory. Sharing this feeling is a way to keep it alive. Take this story with you, talk about it. Ask yourself, what in my life could be lived differently? No transformation happens overnight. But every transformation begins with a vision. And this story is, above all, an invitation to look beyond what we've been taught, to imagine beyond what we've been sold, to build beyond what we've been allowed to dream. The wealth of a society cannot be measured only by what it accumulates, but by what it sustains. And sustaining human, environmental, and spiritual relationships in balance may be the deepest form of wealth we can achieve. If this story made you think, if it sparked any flame inside you, consider letting it echo. Send it to someone. Comment on what you felt. Return to it when you need to remember that there are other ways, other paths, other ways of being. Because even if the world is not yet ready, these small communities have already begun. And sometimes, all we need is to know that another path exists, to find the courage to try.